Florida is still one of the best states in the country to retire in. Zero state income tax, year-round warmth, beaches, springs, sunshine, the whole package. The problem is that most people hear Florida retirement and immediately picture Miami or Naples or St. Pete, check the rent prices, and quietly give up. Here's what those people are missing. There is a second Florida, not a secret, just overlooked, where the same tax benefits apply, the weather is identical, the health care is solid, and a retired couple living on $2,000 a month can cover rent, groceries, utilities, and still have money left over at the end of the month. Not hypothetically. Actually, we found 10 cities where this works in 2026. Some are inland, some are coastal. One of them has swans that belong to Queen Elizabeth. Another one is built on kumquat farms. A couple of them are so affordable that buying a home outright, no mortgage, just done, is within reach on a modest retirement savings. These are not tourist traps. They are not transitional neighborhoods waiting to be gentrified. They are functioning communities where people already live well on fixed incomes, and where the cost of a comfortable retirement is a fraction of what it runs in the cities that get all the press. Before the list, the math deserves one quick explanation. 3 factors work together in every city on this list. First, Florida charges no state income tax, which means every pension check, every Social Security payment, and every IRA withdrawal arrives intact. Second, every city here indexes 5 to 12% below the national cost of living average, meaning groceries, utilities, and services are structurally cheaper, not just occasionally discounted. Third, housing costs in these markets sit well below the national median, which is the single largest retirement expense for most households. When all 3 of those compress simultaneously, $2,000 a month stops being a tight budget and starts a reasonable one. Here are 10 Florida cities where $2,000 that month covers everything in retirement 2026. Bartow. Most people planning a Florida retirement have a list of cities in their head. Jacksonville maybe, Sarasota, Orlando if they're feeling bold. Bartow is almost never on that list, and that absence is exactly why the prices are still this low. Bartow is the county seat of Polk County, which means it has been a functioning civic center since the 1850s. It has a courthouse, it has history, it has Spanish moss hanging over streets lined with homes that were built when craftsmanship was part of the budget. What it does not have is an Instagram presence, and that has kept it genuinely structurally cheap. Rent here runs under $950 a month. Entry-level homes start around $150,000. The cost of living sits at a level the research describes as extremely low, maximizing retirement capital, which is a formal way of saying your money goes further here than almost anywhere else in the state. The community texture is real. Saturday farmers markets, local high school football games that double as neighborhood social events, a multi-generational hardware store that has been serving the same families for decades, a downtown with murals, antique shops, and cafes serving sweet tea. This is not a city performing small-town identity for tourists. It's a city that never stopped being one. The positioning between Tampa and Orlando means neither city is an unreachable drive when you need an airport, a specialist, or an evening out. But the pace inside Bartow stays slow by design, and that design is what keeps the prices honest. For retirees looking to eliminate a housing payment entirely, the math here is more favorable than anywhere else on this list. At $150,000, a cash purchase is within reach on a modest retirement account, and once that payment disappears, $2,000 a month covers a lot of ground. The city earns its place at the bottom of this list, not because it is the least impressive entry, but because it represents the financial floor, the point at which retirement affordability in Florida reaches its most accessible form. Dade City. 20 minutes north of Bartow, the terrain shifts. Dade City sits in Pasco County, and the first thing that surprises people who drive through for the first time is the topography. Florida is famously flat. Dade City has hills, actual rolling hills, green and soft with oak trees and farm roads that look nothing like the Florida on travel brochures. That is a deliberate quality of life detail, not a novelty. The visual texture of a place shapes daily life in ways that are hard to quantify but easy to feel. Waking up to hills and farmland reads differently than waking up to a suburban grid that extends to the horizon. And for retirees who spent decades in dense metros, that difference registers immediately. The financial profile here mirrors Bartow closely. Rent runs under $950, and entry-level homes are available under $200,000. The cost of living indexes as exceptionally low relative to coastal counties, which tracks with the agricultural identity of the surrounding area. Local farms, kumquat groves, and Saturday markets that reflect a food economy still connected to the land it sits on. The trade-off is genuine and worth naming directly. Dade City deliberately avoids high-density commercial development. There is no major shopping center, no chain restaurant corridor, no big box retail. For anything in that category, Tampa is roughly 1 hour south. For the right retiree, someone who moved to Florida to slow down, not to stay plugged into the commercial grid, it is not a price at all. What the town offers instead is what some retirees specifically come looking for. A community where people know each other, where front porches are used, where the Saturday market is a social event as much as a shopping trip. The architectural character reinforces that. Church steeples, historic streetscapes, a built environment that was designed for residents rather than for revenue. High Springs. About 45 minutes northwest of Gainesville, High Springs is the most financially accessible city on this entire list, and the outdoor lifestyle it offers would cost significantly more anywhere else in the country. Median home prices sit under $170,000. Monthly rent runs around $745, a number that requires a second look on a list covering Florida in 2026. The cost of living index runs 10 to 12% below the national average. Here is what that money buys: direct access to some of the best freshwater spring systems in North America. Jenny Springs, Blue Springs, Post Springs, and the Santa Fe River are all within reach of town. These are not amenities that cost a membership fee or a drive to a resort. They are natural features that belong to the region, and they support kayaking, paddleboarding, swimming, and long afternoons under mature oak trees at a cost of essentially nothing. The surrounding environment carries a specific quality worth naming for viewers who have not spent time in this part of Florida. The springs run clear and cool year-round. The oak canopy over the river trails is dense enough to feel like a separate world from the open Florida sun, and the pace of activity on the water, mostly local residents, not tour groups, gives it the texture of a place that serves its community rather than its visitor count. The honest trade-off in High Springs is that the town is small in a very specific way. There is no local hospital with full service care, and there is no major commercial center. Gainesville, 25 minutes away, handles both. Residents access regional services regionally and pay local prices for everything else. That structure is a feature of the financial model, not a gap in it. For retirees whose retirement vision looks less like a resort and more like a quiet morning on clear water, High Springs is a genuinely hard deal to beat. The $745 rent figure alone changes the arithmetic of what $2,000 a month can do. Edgewater. The assumption most people carry into a search for affordable Florida retirement is that coastal and affordable cannot coexist anymore. Edgewater challenges that assumption with actual current data. Located along the Indian River and the Atlantic, directly south of New Smyrna Beach, Edgewater is a quiet coastal city where two-bedroom apartments rent for under $1,000 a month, and starter homes near the water are priced between $180,000 and $230,000. In Florida's 2026 coastal real estate environment, that price range should not still exist, but it does. The lifestyle is water-centered in a practical daily way. Residents fish from their backyards, take boats out through the Indian River, and cycle along streets lined with oak canopy. The Indian River itself is a protected lagoon system, which means the waterfront here is calmer and more navigable than open ocean, and the fishing it supports is genuinely productive for people who want that as a daily routine rather than an occasional excursion. Edgewater is also a town that functions for the people who live there, not for visitors. There is no tourist infrastructure, no high-rise skyline, no nightlife corridor. What there is instead is a community that operates at a quiet pace and a coastal location that would cost 2 or 3 times the price in a city with more promotional energy behind it. Florida's zero state income tax applies here the same as it does in Miami. The groceries are cheaper. The utilities are cheaper. The healthcare costs index below the national average. And the commute to Daytona Beach or Orlando when something larger is needed is manageable. For retirees who built a mental image of a waterfront retirement and then spent years believing the price had passed them by, Edgewater is worth a serious look. Deltona. Deltona's selling point is geographic and entirely structural. It sits in Volusia County, positioned directly between Orlando and Daytona Beach, with both accessible in 30 to 40 minutes. That positioning is the entire financial argument. A retiree living in Deltona is not isolated from a major airport. Orlando International is well within range. They are not cut off from beaches. Daytona's Atlantic coast is a short drive east. They are not removed from the medical infrastructure of a large metro. Orlando's healthcare system is accessible without requiring Orlando's rent prices. What Deltona charges for that access is a cost of living 5 to 7% below the national average and a rental market that runs higher than some of the more rural cities on this list, but still sits well below what comparable access would cost inside the cities it borders. The city itself is built around quiet, established suburban neighborhoods, cul-de-sacs, green spaces, Lake Monroe, Green Springs Park. Lake Monroe sits at the southern edge of the St. John's River system, and the waterfront access it provides is an outdoor amenity that shapes daily quality of life in a real way. Morning walks along the water, fishing access, and the visual calm of a large natural lake within city limits are not incidental details for retirees weighing their options. The trade-off is the absence of a concentrated downtown district. Deltona does not have an active restaurant row or a walkable urban core. For dining, nightlife, and cultural programming, residents travel to Orlando or Daytona. For retirees who have made a clear-eyed calculation about what they actually use versus what they assumed they would use, this is often a non-issue. The underlying logic of Deltona is access without cost of residency, and for retirees who think in those terms, that geographic premium captured for free is the entire pitch. Ocala. Ocala carries a title, Horse Capital of the World. That sounds like a Chamber of Commerce tagline until you spend a few hours driving through the surrounding countryside and realize it is just an accurate description of what the land is used for. The horse farms and open pastures that define the area around the city have shaped a real estate market where space is genuinely available at prices that reflect it. The median price per square foot in Ocala sits around $180. And large residential plots, the kind that offer real privacy and distance from neighboring properties, are purchasable at that rate. Rent runs between $1,000 and $1,300 a month. Entry-level single-family homes start in the low 200s. The Ocala National Forest and Silver Springs State Park sit directly outside the city, which means the outdoor recreation available to residents is not a peripheral amenity but a defining geographic feature of the region. Hiking trails, freshwater springs, kayak routes, these are the kind of assets that in other markets get priced into surrounding real estate at a significant premium. Here they are simply part of the landscape. The local economy is not static. Investment in technology and logistics, alongside the established equine industry, has added economic diversity that matters for long-term property value stability. Healthcare is handled locally. Advent Health and HCA Florida both operate in Ocala, which removes one of the primary practical anxieties about choosing a non-metropolitan retirement location. Residents do not need to drive to a major city for routine or specialized care, and that independence is worth more in retirement planning than it often gets credit for. The honest limitation is distance. Ocala is inland, and the nearest major metropolitan centers are over an hour away. For retirees who have settled into a lifestyle that does not require frequent urban contact, that distance is priced correctly. The open land, the manageable cost per square foot, and the stable local healthcare make Ocala particularly well suited to retirees who prioritize physical space and assumed they could not afford it. Gainesville. Gainesville is the institutional outlier on this list. Every other city draws its affordability from obscurity, from agricultural identity, from distance from major markets. Gainesville draws its affordability from something more unusual, a city that has research hospital-level healthcare, a major university anchoring its economy, a walkable downtown, and home prices that still come in under $210,000. The University of Florida does more for this city than produce graduates. It creates a stable, recession-resistant local economy that does not boom and bust with the real estate cycle. It feeds UF Health and North Florida Regional Medical Center, giving the city healthcare infrastructure that is genuinely rare for a market of its size and price. It brings cultural programming, public events, and an active urban energy that most comparable cost cities simply do not have. Depot Park and the Gainesville-Hawthorne Trail give the city active outdoor infrastructure, paved paths, open green space, and waterfront access within the city's core. For retirees who want daily walkability without paying for a walkable coastal city, this combination is difficult to replicate at this price point. The cost of living runs 8% below the national average. One-bedroom rent averages around $1,050. The inland location carries a structural benefit that is easy to overlook in retirement planning, significantly reduced exposure to direct hurricane impact compared to coastal Florida cities. Both the Atlantic and the Gulf are within a 2-hour drive when the weather calls for it, but the city itself sits in a position of relative natural shelter. The university does mean that certain central neighborhoods carry student density on game days and during the academic year. Retirees who want total quiet have a genuine option 25 minutes away in High Springs. But retirees who want access to lectures, farmers markets, live music, and a genuinely walkable downtown at below average prices are in a position that Gainesville delivers better than most cities on this list. Pensacola. Here is the city that challenges the entire premise that coastal retirement is no longer affordable. Pensacola sits in the Florida Panhandle on the Gulf of Mexico, and the beaches here, white sand, clear water, the specific visual quality that Florida's Gulf Coast is known for, are not distant from the city's residential neighborhoods. They are the geography the city is built around. Rent runs under $1,100 a month. Entry-level homes are available under $250,000. The cost of living indexes as highly competitive for a coastal market, genuinely lower than the coastal premium most Florida beach towns now charge. The economic anchor that keeps Pensacola stable is its military presence. Naval Air Station Pensacola and its role as the home base for the Blue Angels provide a non-cyclical economic foundation that insulates the local real estate market from the boom-bust cycles that affect tourism-dependent coastal cities. Military anchoring creates the kind of durable stability that matters for a retirement market specifically. Property values here do not spike on hype and collapse on sentiment the way they do in cities where the economy runs on seasonal visitor traffic. The city itself has a specific earned cultural identity. Brick Street downtown, food halls, jazz bars, seafood festivals, Mardi Gras parades. None of it is performed for tourists. It is the product of a naval and Gulf Coast history that runs deep in the city's architecture and social life. The kayak trails, state parks, and public fishing docks that line the coastline and Escambia Bay give retirees a daily outdoor infrastructure that competes with much more expensive Florida markets. The geographic isolation from Central and South Florida is a real trade-off for retirees who maintain strong ties to those areas. For retirees who have made a clean break and want a Gulf Coast lifestyle on a fixed income, the distance from Miami is irrelevant. What remains is white sand beaches, a stable economy, a culturally specific city, and housing costs that the rest of Florida's coast stopped offering years ago. Lakeland. Halfway between Tampa and Orlando on Interstate 4, Lakeland occupies a geographic position that would normally command a significant price premium. It does not, and understanding why is most of the story. Lakeland is a city of 38 natural lakes. The residential fabric of the city is organized around those lakes. Walking paths, cycling routes, waterfront parks, and has a quality of daily outdoor access that costs a fraction of what comparable lake access runs in recreational markets in other states. Lake Hollingsworth and Lake Morton anchor the most active recreational areas, and the paths around them are a genuine community asset used daily by residents of all ages. Rent in Lakeland runs under $1,000 a month. Homes start around $150,000 and scale up to $300,000 at the higher end of the entry-level market, which means the city accommodates a range of retirement budgets rather than a single narrow profile. Florida Southern College adds an academic and cultural dimension to the city, public events, arts programming, and an architectural campus designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. The campus is the largest collection of Wright-designed structures in the world, which means that on a daily walk through the city, a retiree is passing buildings that belong in an architecture textbook. The walkable historic downtown features local cafes, boutiques, antique stores, and a regular calendar of food truck rallies, farmers markets, and art walks. And then there are the swans. Lake Morton is home to a population of royal swans descended from a pair gifted to the city by Queen Elizabeth II. They are protected by the city, they have a dedicated caretaker, and they are, in a genuinely disarming way, just there, on a public lake in a mid-sized Florida city that rents for under $1,000 a month. This is the kind of specific, verifiable detail that tends to stay with people. Tampa and Orlando are both under an hour away. Disney World and the Gulf Coast are accessible within 45 minutes. For retirees who want genuine proximity to major destinations without paying for the zip code, Lakeland's Interstate 4 position delivers exactly that. Jacksonville. Jacksonville makes this list as the proof of concept that affordability and metropolitan scale are not mutually exclusive, that a retiree does not have to trade away the infrastructure of a real city to live within a sensible budget. Jacksonville is Florida's largest city by land area, and that physical scale is the financial mechanism. The city is large enough to contain genuine neighborhood diversity, urban historic districts like Riverside and San Marco, quiet established suburbs, semi-rural edges where the city fades into natural Florida. A retiree in Jacksonville can calibrate their density level, their proximity to services, and the character of their immediate neighborhood without leaving the city limits. That flexibility is rare, and at this price point it is essentially unique in Florida. One-bedroom rent averages around $1,000 a month. Starter homes run from $180,000 to $250,000. The cost of living sits approximately 10% below the national average, a meaningful spread that compounds across groceries, utilities, services, and healthcare costs over the course of a retirement. The institutional depth here is significant. The Mayo Clinic operates in Jacksonville, which for retirees thinking carefully about long-term healthcare access is a concrete and meaningful presence. This is not a community hospital filling a regional gap. It is one of the most recognized medical institutions in the country, available to residents of a city where one-bedroom apartments rent for $1,000 a month. Jacksonville International Airport connects directly to major domestic and international destinations. The city maintains over 80,000 acres of municipal green space, a figure that exceeds the total area of many Florida cities outright. The St. Johns River runs through the city and shapes its geography the way coastal water shapes Florida's beach towns. Waterfront parks line its banks, and the river provides a visual and recreational anchor that gives Jacksonville a water city identity without requiring oceanfront prices. Jacksonville Beach sits 20 minutes to the east for residents who want sand and surf without structuring their daily life around a beach town's seasonal rhythms and elevated rents. The economy is anchored by logistics, healthcare, and technology, with employers distributed across the city. For retirees with working spouses, part-time interests, or adult children in the workforce, that economic base provides options that purely residential retirement markets cannot. The honest limitation is scale. Jacksonville is sprawled in a way that requires driving between neighborhoods. There is no single walkable core that serves the whole city. But for retirees building a settled routine, a neighborhood they know, a healthcare system they trust, an airport they use twice a year, that familiarity develops quickly, and the infrastructure underneath it is as complete as any city in Florida. A major metropolitan economy, an 80,000-acre park system, the Mayo Clinic, a coastal beach 20 minutes away, and a cost of living 10% below the national average. Jacksonville is not an overlooked small town making a case for itself. It is a major city that has simply never inflated its prices to match its actual offering, and for retirees who do the math, that gap is where the value lives. 10 cities, a range of housing prices from $150,000 to $250,000. Rent from $745 to $1,300 a month. Cost of living indices running 5 to 12% below the national average in every case across every city on this list. The common thread is not that these places are cheap because they are lacking something. Most of them sit within an hour of a major city, a major airport, or a Tier 1 medical system. The common thread is that they are priced for the people who actually live in them, not for the reputation of the state they happen to be in. Florida's zero state income tax does not require a Miami address. The Gulf of Mexico does not require a Naples zip code. The springs, the oak canopy, the warm winters, the waterfront access, none of that is exclusive to the markets that get all the attention. What those markets add at this point is mostly cost. The retirees already living in Bartow, Pensacola, Edgewater, and High Springs made a specific calculation that the lifestyle they came to Florida for was available at a price the headlines did not reflect. They were right, and the cities on this list did not make that deal disappear, they just stopped advertising it. The $2,000 a month retirement in Florida is not a fantasy built on compromise. It is a geographical decision, and for the right person with the right priorities, it is a very good one.